Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
Their warning struck first. Our answer came after. Sector 9 Gamma opened around Iron Hand Group 9 like a drowned cathedral. Vast, empty, lightless. Dust halos drifted across the navigation arcs of the HSS Victory, scattering faint reflections across the command deck as the fleet settled out of translation. No chatter, no alarms. Just the quiet hum of a cruiser returning to real space with purpose. Commander Soren remained still at the forward rail, boots aligned with the deck's center line. His posture was straight, his breathing calm. It was the kind of stillness that made bridge officers lower their voices without thinking, a presence that suggested he was already 3 decisions ahead of whatever waited in the dark. Translation stable, Lieutenant Rell reported from sensors. Starfield normalization in 30 seconds. Local density higher than projections. Soren didn't answer immediately. He let the bridge settle, let the data resolve, let his intuition absorb the silence. Sector 9 Gamma wasn't supposed to be silent. Not this deep into Kargathi-claimed territory. The Veil, Iron Hand's recon cutter, was running 100 kilometers ahead and a few degrees above the group's plane. Its passive arrays were sweeping for anything that fell outside the usual stellar noise. Soren's eyes narrowed slightly. "Veil is holding position?" he asked. "Aye, Commander," replied Ensign Cho, voice steady despite the tension. "They're reporting faint mass signatures at long range. No drive output. Could be derelicts." "It isn't derelicts," Soren said quietly. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. His officers had served under him long enough to recognize that tone, the one that signaled a pattern he saw before the instruments fully caught up. Across the forward viewport, the darkness shifted, not by motion, but by shape. A sharp line of absence where starfields bent and thinned. Lieutenant Rell's voice tightened. "Contact. Multiple hulls. No transponder, no broadcast." Iron Hand Group 9's escorts, the Ravelin and Calder, adjusted their lateral thrusters automatically to tighten the formation. Battle silence settled across the deck like cooling metal. The Kargathi did not reveal themselves quickly. They drifted into awareness the way predators approached a watering hole. Slow, controlled, confident. Shapes detached from the dark. Long angular hulls, armored ridges like serrated knives, heat-scored plating arranged in brutal, geometric slabs. Their ships were not designed to be beautiful. They were designed to be feared. The Kargathi had arrived without words, which meant they believed intimidation alone would suffice. Soren clasped his hands behind his back. "Maintain course," he said. Heavy reptilian warcraft continued to advance in perfect silence. No lights, no hails, no recognition that Iron Hand existed beyond the fact that they intended to remove it. When the Kargathi finally broke the silence, the transmission hit the Victory's comms like stone-shattering glass. Harsh, low-frequency growls carried across clipped syllables. "Human vessels. Withdraw or be erased." The recording ended instantly, as if more words would imply uncertainty. The bridge remained still. Lieutenant Rell swallowed. "Commander, they're locking weapons." Soren stayed silent for a beat. Calm, steady. "Open a channel. Narrow beam." The comm officer tapped a single key. "This is Commander Soren of Iron Hand Group 9, he said. "We hold position under UHDF authority. Nothing more, nothing less." He gave the Kargathi exactly 1 heartbeat of silence to consider the meaning. They didn't. The Kargathi fired without warning. A wall of kinetic darts ripped across the distance, micro-shards propelled at relativistic velocity, each one carrying the impact force of a main cannon slug. The barrage hit the Victory's forward plating in a glittering roar, like sandstorms slamming against steel cliffs. Shockwaves rolled down the cruiser's spine, rattling secondary conduits and vibrating through deck plates. "Forward armor plating absorbing impact," Ravelin reported over tactical band. Calder adjusting shields, intercepting fragment bleed. Soren didn't move. Anchor point, keep your repair drones cold until we stabilize. Ravelin, maintain lateral position. Calder, shift 4 degrees starboard, now. The human ship slid into alignment just as a second wave launched, this one heavier, more concentrated. The Kargathi believed in psychological overkill. Their doctrine demanded a kill in the opening minute. Commander, Cho said, enemy fire rhythm is stabilizing. I'm seeing a cycle, 8 seconds between primary volleys. Soren nodded once. Vale, what do you see? The recon cutter's captain responded through crisp static. Confirmed pattern, black tide doctrine. They're saturating space ahead of us, but their rhythm is fixed. Soren's fingers tightened behind his back. Then we break their opening move. The Victory lurched as another volley impacted, this time diffused by newly adjusted plating angles. Soren waited for the faint vibration that accompanied the end of the salvo. He timed his next breath to the cycle. Helm, he said quietly. Drift us 300 meters port. Then cut forward acceleration. Do it on my mark. Aye, Commander. The Kargathi's third barrage launched. Dense, furious, unimaginative. Mark. The Victory slid sideways, crossing the Kargathi salvo window cleanly. The barrage passed behind the cruiser, shattering harmlessly across a cloud of dispersing debris from earlier hits. The escorts matched the maneuver with practiced synchrony, the group moving as a single organism. The bridge filled with the sharp exhale of collective relief. They overshot us, Rel said, stunned. Their cycle didn't adjust. Soren finally stepped forward, hands returning to his sides. They won't adjust. Kargathi doctrine didn't allow for it. They believed the opening strike should erase resistance. Everything after was punishment for disobedience. Vale, Soren said, mark the lead vessel's thermal weak point. A brief pause. Marked, Commander. Forward port exchanger. Exposed between armor ridges. Ravelin, Soren said. 1 lance shot, controlled. No flare. The human frigate responded without deviation. A coil lance beam snapped across the void, a narrow, invisible line that only became visible when it hit its target. The Kargathi's screening craft erupted in a controlled, sharp bloom of white-hot vapor, torn open in a single precise cut. The alien formation hesitated, not because they feared the loss, but because they hadn't expected resistance to survive long enough to fire back at all. The bridge grew quiet again, but it wasn't fear now. It was the kind of silence that settled before a second, deeper storm. Soren watched the enemy ships slowly reconfigure their line, still following brute force doctrine, still believing dominance came from overwhelming pressure rather than intelligent control of a battlefield. Sector 9 Gamma stretched around them without witness, cold and silent. Iron Hand Group 9 held position, weapons warm, hulls steady, formation unbroken. The Kargathi prepared their next strike, and Soren began shaping the next move. He studied the Kargathi repositioning with the same calm he'd worn since arrival. The alien warship spread into a widening arc, hulls angling outward like the opening jaws of a carnivore. The black tide was preparing to roll again, this time harder, this time with the expectation that intimidation would finally do its work. Telemetry shift, Rel said. They're increasing charge across their forward emitters. Of course they were. Increased volume, increased shock. Predictable. Rigid. Kargathi. Commander, Lieutenant Hale said from navigation, hands tight on his console. If they push past saturation fire, our forward plating won't hold another direct cycle. Soren kept his voice steady. It won't have to. He stepped toward the tactical rail, eyes narrowing just slightly as the Kargathi hull signatures brightened with charging heat. The enemy was funneling power toward their prow arrays, pulling energy from lateral systems. They were committing to one overwhelming strike. No adjustment, no fallback. A mistake they didn't know they were making. Vale, Soren said. Feed firing rhythm to Ravelin and Calder. Align counter vector on projected cycle 5. The recon cutter's reply was crisp. Data relay engaged. Cho looked up from her console. Sir, that puts us right inside their dispersal cone. Yes, Soren answered quietly, unless we move before they fire. The Victory hummed as thrusters primed. The escorts shifted, micro-corrections steady and crisp. Iron Hand Group 9 slid into a new formation, one designed not for durability, but for timing. Another Kargathi transmission cut across the bridge, deeper and more distorted than the first, resonating with low-frequency menace. You remain. You die. Not a negotiation. Not a warning. A verdict. And not a surprising one. Soren didn't respond. Then the Kargathi unleashed their next barrage. A blinding fan of kinetic fire bloomed outward, enough mass to pulverize an armored cruiser clean through. It expanded like an executioner's axe, sweeping across the void, bearing down on Iron Hand Group 9 with crushing inevitability. Soren didn't flinch. Helm, he said softly. Cut thrust. The entire formation bled velocity at once. The barrage swept past their bow by less than 100 meters, roaring through empty darkness where the Victory had been just a second before. The shockwave rippled against Iron Hand's hulls, but harmlessly, the cone's lethal center passing wide. Calder's captain breathed out over comms, a small sound clipped instantly. Commander, they overshot again. They will keep overshooting, Soren replied. Kargathi doctrine punished offense with more offense. It had no branches for an enemy who declined to stand still. Ravelin, Soren said. Counterfire. On it. A trio of coil lance beams flashed across the dark. Thin, surgical lines that punched directly into the Kargathi vessel, whose charging arrays were still cooling from their failed blast. The alien ship buckled inward, armor plates fracturing, internal conduits erupting through the seams. A crescent of molten metal vented into space. A stunned pause followed, not from Iron Hand, from the Kargathi. Their formation flickered with micro-adjustments, small, uncertain shifts that betrayed the slightest fracture in their otherwise overwhelming confidence. The reptilian ship stalled, as if reassessing whether their prey was actually prey. They're changing vector, Rel said, eyes scanning telemetry. But it's confused. No unified pattern. Soren stepped back to the center line of the deck. That is their first realization, he said. That intimidation has failed. Outside the viewport, the alien warships expanded their arc further, forming a wider concave line aimed to envelop Iron Hand. A common black tide maneuver. Surround, crush, erase. But the arc was wide. Too wide. Because fear of a single wrong move had disrupted their timing. The Kargathi had shifted into brute force caution, an oxymoron only their doctrine could produce, and Soren had been waiting for exactly that hesitation. Veil, he said, drop below their sensor floor, shadow their inside flank. Aye, Commander. The recon cutter vanished from visual and active scan, slipping beneath the Kargathi barrage plane, using thrusters barely strong enough to leave a signature. The reptilian ships didn't react. They were still recalibrating their intimidation posture, trying to apply more pressure instead of better strategy. On the Victory's bridge, the atmosphere tightened again. Not panic, not fear, but the collective understanding that the next exchange would define the conflict ahead. Calder, Soren said, prepare a defensive scatter pattern. Ravelin, load precision rounds. Victory will anchor center line. Hale turned from navigation. Commander, that puts you directly in their next cone. Yes. His voice was calm enough to steady the entire deck. The Kargathi need to believe we are still on their terms, Soren said, just long enough for them not to see what we're actually doing. The alien formation brightened, charging again for full output. Rel whispered, they're committing everything. All forward arrays. Good, Soren said. He lifted a hand, not in a dramatic gesture, but in the measured, quiet command that had defined his entire career. Iron Hand, he said. Prepare to advance. The alien ships flared white along their spines. Kargathi firing arcs converged. Black-Tide Doctrine demanded annihilation. Soren's eyes sharpened. His voice lowered. Now! Iron Hand Group 9 surged forward at the exact moment the Kargathi weapons discharged. Their barrage swept behind the human formation, smashing harmlessly into empty void. The victory cut directly through the gap before the reptilian line could tighten, the escorts trailing in a precise triad. At the same moment, the veil rose from below the enemy formation, locking onto a Kargathi coolant artery exposed during the charging cycle. One silent pulse of its lance battery ignited the artery. The nearest Kargathi warship went dark. No flame, no explosion. Just a sudden, spreading blackout across its armored spine as internal systems collapsed in cascade failure. Half the alien arc faltered. Telemetry spiraled. Their doctrine, already strained, finally fractured. Rel looked up, astonished. Commander, their formation's collapsing. Soren nodded. They expected fear, he said softly. They received timing. The alien ships recoiled, adjusting thrusters and redistributing power, trying to regain the overwhelming posture they depended on. But the void around them had changed. Their certainty was gone. Soren watched the flickering arcs of Kargathi drive signatures in cold silence, his hands returning behind his back. Iron Hand's hulls glowed faintly from residual heat. The Kargathi regrouped, slower now, less sure. Sector 9 Gamma remained quiet. The battle was not finished. The war had not begun. But the Kargathi had just learned something that no reptilian doctrine had prepared them for. Humans didn't break. Not fast. Not ever. And Iron Hand had only answered the first strike. The aftermath settled slowly. No clean break, no full silence, just the slow hum of recovery. Iron Hand Group 9 drifted on low thrust through Sector 9 Gamma, formation tight around the Victory, while Anchor Point's drone swarms fanned out like silver insects across the cruiser's outer hull. Their arc lights traced micro-fissures left by Kargathi darts, no threat to structural integrity, but damage that demanded respect. Commander Soren remained at the forward rail, watching the dark ahead rather than the repair efforts. The tremors beneath the deck were faint now, no longer the jarring shock of kinetic strikes, but the steady vibration of systems resetting themselves, power redistribution, hull resonance dampers, inertial stabilizers sinking back to baseline. It was the rhythm of a ship recovering its breath. Lieutenant Hale broke the quiet first. Navigation arrays recalibrated, Commander. Sector drift normalized. Good, Soren said. Forward plating shows 12 microfractures, Rel added without turning from his console. Anchor Point's drones are sealing them now. We'll be stable within the hour. Soren gave a slight nod. Report casualties. Minor, Rel said. 2 contusions from shock reverberation on Ravelin. 1 medpod activation on Calder. No critical injuries. The bridge absorbed that in silence. Not relief, not celebration, just acknowledgement. Iron Hand wasn't built for cheering. They were built for surviving what others misjudged. The lights dimmed briefly as Vale re-established secure tether link. A soft tone signaled success. Commander, Ensign Cho said, leaning slightly forward in his seat. Vale has data on the Kargathi withdrawal vector. Withdrawal was generous wording. The aliens had pulled back, but not far, and not out of caution. Their formation had shifted into a wide crescent, shadowing Iron Hand's trajectory. Close enough to track, far enough to avoid immediate engagement. Typical of forces reconsidering doctrine in real time. Soren didn't need Cho to explain it. They're waiting, Soren said. Cho's shoulders shifted, just slightly. For reinforcements? For certainty. He didn't elaborate. Kargathi decision cycles were predictable. Overwhelm, enforce, erase. When that pattern fractured, their commanders stalled, often violently, while doctrine reassembled itself around a new assumption. The hesitation visible in their vector spacing was part of that reset, a crack in confidence the size of an entire warship. "Commander," Hale said, "I've rechecked our local drift. Without Helios 3's updates, this area is more unstable than we thought." "How unstable?" "Enough that the corridor shifts by nearly 2 degrees per day." Hale turned fully toward him. "If we lose our fallback lane, it'll be impossible to retreat safely until Helios 3's data is recovered." Soren's jaw tightened slightly. Understood. Silence returned, heavier this time. Cho hesitated before speaking. "Commander, I know we haven't addressed it directly yet, but why would the Kargathi guard an empty region if Helios 3 went dark by accident?" Rel answered before Soren could. They wouldn't. And there it was. The question no one wanted to voice, but everyone carried. Kargathi patrols didn't linger without purpose. They didn't posture unless they intended to dominate a corridor. They didn't give ultimatums unless the territory meant something. Soren lifted his hand slightly. "Status on briefing room." "Ready," Hale said. "Rel Cho, with me." The command deck held its breath as Soren stepped into the briefing chamber. Small, circular, stripped of ornament. Just projection tables, wall-mounted charts, and the faint hum of a ship still settling after impact. As the lights dimmed, a holographic render of Helios 3 flickered to life, a compact research array with 3 radial arms, each tipped with gravimetric sensor packages. Detached, clinical, fragile compared to the armored hulls around it. Soren spoke first. "GNA Helios 3 went silent 11 days ago. Last transmission indicated anomalous gravitational drift beyond expected variance. The outpost was preparing to lock down its data stores." Rel folded his arms. Then it cut out. "Yes." Soren turned slightly. "And that data must be retrieved. Without it, the Directorate cannot guarantee safe travel for any vessel in 9 Gamma. Not civilian, not military." Cho's eyes followed the hologram as its sensor arrays turned in a slow loop. "Commander, are we certain the Kargathi didn't destroy it?" "No," Soren said. "We're not certain of anything. That's the problem." He tapped a control pad. The projection shifted to a topographic map of the gravitational corridor, a twisting pale blue ribbon through a dark field. "This is the corridor with Helios 3 active." The line was stable, narrow, reliable. Soren switched overlays. "This is the corridor now." The pale ribbon broke into jagged filaments, a chaotic web of migrating shear pockets and unstable drift zones. Haley let out a low breath. "That's not navigable." "No," Soren agreed. "Not without Helios 3's stored data." Cho looked up. "So we can't retreat." "We can," Soren said calmly, "if we want to risk sheer collapse." Cho swallowed. Soren continued. "Our path lies forward, not back." The ship hummed around them, a subtle shift in mass distribution, the kind that meant Anchor Point had finished its first sweep and was transitioning to a second. Rel's console chimed quietly. "Commander, Vale reports new movement." "Show me." Rel projected the feed. A slow, deliberate shift in the Kargathi formation, no longer a loose crescent. Now a tightening arc, angling toward Ironhand's path but not yet accelerating. Watching. Calculating. Their hulls glowed faintly along the dorsal ridges, power cycling for readiness, not attack. "They're shadowing us," Cho said. "They're deciding if we're prey," Rel added. Soren watched the telemetry without blinking. "Cho, Rel, what do you see?" Rel answered first. "They're compensating for their earlier miscalculation. Smaller gaps, tighter spacing, reinforced forward line. They're adjusting doctrine." "Slowly," Soren said. "Yes," Rel agreed. "Slower than they should. They're uncertain." Cho leaned closer. "Commander, if they think we're moving to reinforce a position, then they'll escalate," Soren finished, "which is why we move quietly. Hale." "Captain?" "Set a course for Helios 3. Low output. Passive sensors only. Hale nodded and issued the commands. Movement shifted under their feet, gentle as a breath, as the Victory eased into a new trajectory. The escorts matched flawlessly. Vale dropped to a lower vector, skimming the corridor edge, its stealth field blending into drifting particulate. Anchor Point recalled its drones and sealed its base. Outside the viewport, the Kargathi ships remained at distance, their outline a serrated shadow against an already dark region. Watching. Waiting. Soren returned to the forward rail. Sector 9 Gamma stretched ahead, its stars distorted faintly by gravitational eddies. Helios 3 once charted with clinical precision. Now those distortions were raw, wild, untamed. As Ironhand advanced, sensor echoes grew thicker, faint metal signatures, residual radiative trails, fragments of something scattered across a wide volume. Not wreckage, not debris, something else. The bridge quieted as the first structural echoes of Helios 3 drifted into range, distant, fragmented, almost uncertain. Hale looked back. "Commander, we're approaching the coordinates." Soren didn't answer immediately. He watched the distortions ahead, the warping starlight, the faint glow of particulate drifting where nothing should drift at all. Ironhand moved forward without sound, without ceremony, and the dark waited for them. Sector 9 Gamma thickened around Ironhand Group 9 like a slow-moving tide. The stars ahead twisted slightly as the fleet advanced, their light refracted by gravitational filaments Helios 3 should have been charting. Without the outpost's guidance, the corridor felt wrong, unstable not in any dramatic way, but in a quiet, persistent drift that pressed against the hull like a subtle crosswind. The Victory moved at minimal output, its escorts keeping a wide, guarded arc. Vale skimmed ahead on near-silent engines, slipping through distortion eddies that bent around its frame. Anchor Point remained at the rear, drone bays sealed, power signatures muted. The entire group moved as if trying not to wake something. Lieutenant Hale monitored the distortions with the patience of someone listening to a language he didn't yet speak. Rel kept his eyes on the long-range feeds, tracking the Kargathi formation shadowing them at a distance, the serrated silhouettes drifting just far enough to avoid commitment. Cho sat forward in near stillness, watching the faint echoes Helios 3 should have broadcast. "Commander," Hale said quietly, "gravitic drift is increasing ahead. It's not hostile, just displaced." "Define displaced," Soren said, "like the corridor is adjusting around us instead of to us." Soren gave a slight nod. As expected. They continued. The deck vibrated in a slow, uneven pulse, the ship compensating for currents it couldn't fully predict. No one on the bridge raised their voice. Even the Victory seemed to breathe more carefully. Minutes later, Vale transmitted an encrypted fragment. Rel straightened. Visual contact with Helios 3. The projection unfolded in front of them, an outpost of 3 radial arms and a central spine, drifting slightly askew. No lights, no broadcast. Its outer arrays hung motionless against the dark, shadows clinging to their edges. "Hold distance," Soren said. They approached slowly, keeping the entire fleet in a compressed defensive posture. Ravelin angled to port, Calder to starboard, both ready for counterfire that hadn't yet come. The Kargathi shadows stayed far back, forming a wide crescent, as if unwilling to approach the region themselves. Hale studied the projection. "Commander, the outpost is intact." Cho added, "No visible impact damage, no hull breaches, no heat residues. Power signatures flatlined cleanly." Soren watched the image for a long moment. "Rel." "Already scanning," Rel said. "It's cold. Entirely dark. Environmental systems off. No movement inside." Cho frowned. Why power down a gravitic array during an instability? "To avoid worsening it," Soren said. "Approach for boarding. Slow and clean." The HSS Victory eased closer until the docking corridor aligned with Helios 3's central spine. The mechanical arms extended with a soft clank, gripping the outpost's hull. Pressure checks cycled. The boarding tunnel locked in place like a slow exhale. Soren didn't move, but he kept watching. A boarding detail deployed with minimal chatter. 3 engineers, 2 systems analysts, and 1 security lead. This wasn't an assault. This was a recovery. Bridge screens shifted to their suit camera feeds. The first interior shot showed a corridor lined with matte metal panels, untouched by conflict. Dust drifted slowly where environmental systems had shut down. The team advanced, beams slicing through the dark. No bodies, the lead engineer reported. No equipment damage. The team reached a sealed inner door. It opened with a mechanical sigh. Inside the command chamber, consoles sat powered down, screen surfaces smooth and blank. No signs of panic, no overturned chairs, no broken terminals. Everything was simply abandoned. Rel's voice came through. "Commander, picking up structural anomalies." "Show me," Soren said. Rel projected a holographic overlay. Several components were missing, deliberately removed. Gravimetric processors, data link transceivers, field mapping cores. Not torn out, cleanly detached. "They removed key hardware," Rel said. "Why take those and not others?" "To prevent corrupted readings," Soren said calmly, "or to use them elsewhere." Cho leaned forward. "But why evacuate? They had shields. If the Kargathi approached—" The boarding feed interrupted him. "Commander," the engineer said quietly, "escape pod bay is empty." "All pods gone. Launch clamps disengaged within the last 2 weeks." Cho checked timestamps. They left before the Kargathi even reached the region. Rel opened another file. Sensor logs partially corrupted, but several frames remained. A waveform spiked sharply. "Gravitic anomaly on set," Rel said, "beginning roughly 12 days ago." The log showed a jittering field map, distortions clustering into a narrow convergence. Then a second entry. The anomaly intensified faster than projected, a collapse trough forming sharply ahead of schedule. A third entry came next, an outgoing message burst. The waveform ended abruptly. "Kargathi jamming," Rel said. Cho glanced back. "So the Directorate never received their warning?" "No," Soren said softly. "They didn't." Hale looked at the drift patterns on the new hologram. "Commander, this collapse trough, if timed correctly—" "Yes," Soren said. "It could allow a micro-jump," Hale finished. "Dangerous. Nearly suicidal." Cho's voice was hushed. "Are you suggesting the crew used the anomaly to escape?" "No," Soren said. "I'm stating what the data shows." The boarding team reached the final control station. A single broken audio file blinked in the memory core. They opened it. Static flooded the channel. A human voice, strained, rushed, emerged through the distortion. "If anyone gets this, gravitic wave convergence. The trough forming faster. We can't stabilize." More static. "Taking the shuttles. Micro-jump only chance. Staying silent. Do not broadcast." The message cut. Cho hunched slightly over his console. They were alive. 7 minutes before total shutdown. Rel pulled up the external sensors one last time. "Commander, the Kargathi arrived 30 seconds after the shuttles launched." "And they believed the outpost still held its crew," Soren said. His voice remained steady. "Reasonable assumption." Hale studied the Kargathi positions at the edge of the map. "They're not here to occupy land. They think the anomaly is a threat caused by humans." "No," Soren said. "They think humans make the threat worse." Outside, the Kargathi crescent shifted again, still reluctant to enter the deepening distortion around Helios 3. Their formation pressed wider, blocking Iron Hand's retreat path with deliberate, methodical precision. "They're containing us," Rel said. "Not us," Soren replied. "The corridor." The boarding team returned to the docking tunnel. The USS Victory retrieved them without ceremony. The outpost hung in the dark behind them, a silent structure that had done everything right, and still vanished from the Directorate's sight. "Cho," Soren said, "begin full integration of Helios 3's remaining data. Filter microfold vectors. Isolate the collapse trough projections." "Yes, sir." "Hale, plot the anomaly's current trajectory." Hale tapped through the navigation sequence. "It's unstable, but—" "Commander, if the Helios 3 shuttles used that trough, they would have come out somewhere in this sector." He pointed to a faint, distant gravitic pocket. Rel leaned forward. "That region is nearly invisible without Helios data. No wonder the Kargathi haven't found them." Soren watched the projection quietly. "Retrieve everything," he said. "We leave this position immediately." The fleet broke away from Helios 3 with silent engines. Vale returned to forward screening. Ravelin and Calder tightened their arc. Anchor Point sealed its drones. The outpost receded into the darkness, swallowed not by destruction, but by distance and silence. And ahead, deep within the unstable corridor, something small and faint pulsed, barely detectable, a signature too subtle to be a ship, too patterned to be natural drift. Cho whispered, almost afraid to disturb it. "Commander, that's a survival trace." Soren didn't turn from the viewport. "Maintain course," he said. "Passive sensors only." Iron Hand advanced toward the faint echo. Behind them, the Kargathi crescent began to tighten. The corridor shifted again, and the dark grew heavier. Twin. Iron Hand Group 9 advanced in a formation that looked defensive only at a glance. Underneath, every vector, every tilt of the hull was calibrated against the raw, shifting geometry of the corridor. The anomaly ahead pulsed in slow, irregular throbs, its gravitational waves moving like the breath of a dying creature. Soren stood silently at the center rail, watching the readings converge. Helios 3's recovered data hovered in layered holograms around him. Fold vectors, shear pockets, collapse points. The patterns were incomplete, but unmistakable. "Stability window is shrinking," Hale reported. "We're down to 4 hours, maybe less." "Trajectory of the evac shuttles is confirmed," Cho added. "They're in a gravitic dead pocket across the central rupture." Rel took a breath. "To reach that pocket, we'd have to cut directly through the corridor's unstable axis." "And the Kargathi," Hale added. "They're shifting again." Soren didn't look toward the main display. He didn't need to. The Kargathi formations were a constant presence, dark angles at the edge of sensor range, tightening like a jaw. "Ravelin, forward screening," Soren said. "Minimal signature. Calder, adjust bearing 5 degrees sunward. Anchor Point, prepare a compressed data burst, but hold transmission until my order." "Yes, sir." The Victory's engines hummed at a low, controlled output. The ship slid through a cluster of weak distortions, their edges shimmering like thin sheets of ice. "Commander," Hale said, his voice tightening. "The Kargathi are moving to intercept. I count 6 heavy hulls, 8 escorts." Rel's hands flew across his console. "Their formation is wrong." "How?" Soren asked. "They're splitting their pincer," Rel said. "That makes no tactical sense. They're leaving a gap on the approach vector." "Fear," Soren said. Hale frowned. "Of us?" "No," Soren said. "Of the corridor." On the screen, the anomaly shivered, sending ripples through the starfield. A Kargathi destroyer drifted too close to an unstable node. Its forward hull warped inward silently before its captain corrected course. Their doctrine, overwhelming pressure, forward momentum, intimidation, was cracking under the physics of a battlefield that punished aggression. But fear didn't make them retreat. It made them reckless. The Kargathi heavy group surged forward in a broad, crushing arc. "Impact countdown, 30 seconds, Rel warned. Hale's voice tightened. "Commander, hold course," Soren said. The bridge fell silent. The anomaly pulsed. And then the Victory lurched sideways, not from impact, but from Soren's timing. A gravimetric shear wave slammed into the Kargathi line. The lead-heavy warship hit the wave at full burn, its hull compressing against its own forward inertia. The ship twisted, not exploding, but folding in on itself as if crushed by invisible hands. 2 escorts veered off, formation breaking instantly. Rel exhaled. They didn't predict the wave. They can't read the trough cycle, Cho said. We have Helios 3's models. They don't. Hale added. But they're still moving. They're adapting. Crudely. Black tide doctrine, Soren said. If intimidation fails, apply pressure. And if pressure fails? Hale asked. Soren's eyes stayed on the anomaly. They don't have a play for that. The Kargathi regrouped, their ships angling with renewed aggression. The space between them shimmered with the buildup of kinetic bursts. This time they advanced slowly. Not rushing, not lunging, but driving Ironhand toward the center line of the corridor where distortions were strongest. They're trying to force us into the unstable axis, Rel said. They think they're choosing the battlefield, Soren replied. He raised a hand slightly. Ravelin, release drones. Pattern Delta 9. Yes, sir. On the projection, Ravelin released a scatter of drones, microprobes that drifted outward like sparks. They didn't attack. They didn't scan. They simply drifted, silent and dark, mimicking debris. The Kargathi surged forward, exactly on time. Soren watched the anomaly tremble again. Calder, he said calmly. Pulse lateral engines on my mark. Calder's captain acknowledged. The anomaly convulsed. Mark! Calder fired a precisely timed burst. The small shift in position placed it behind the thickest part of a Kargathi firing arc. The kinetic salvos meant for Ironhand struck Calder's drones instead, triggering a chain of distortions that rippled through the Kargathi formation. Their middle rank broke. 2 ships collided, scraping hulls. A third drifted into a microfold that snapped shut like a mouth. The Kargathi comms bands lit up with frantic, overlapping signals. They were losing cohesion. Fear had overtaken discipline. Hale looked up. Commander, their lines are fracturing. Expected, Soren said. Continue forward. Ironhand pushed deeper toward the anomaly's central region. The corridor shook again, long, drawn out, like the groan of stressed metal. Cho's console chimed. Commander, survivor signal is strengthening. It's faint, but consistent. Rel checked the readings. Their pocket is destabilizing. If we don't reach them soon, the shear surge will crush every shuttle inside. Hale added. And Kargathi reinforcements are coming in behind the main group. They're cutting off our retreat path. Retreat isn't our objective, Soren said. The bridge crew exchanged looks. No one argued. Victory's hull trembled as the anomaly expanded. Space warped around them, bending starlight into thin arcs. Commander, Rel said, we have minutes before the center line collapses. Then we don't waste them, Soren said. Another Kargathi cruiser pushed forward, trying to swing around Ironhand's flank. Its hull glowed dark red with charged weaponry. Calder, Soren said, half-burn. Lead them. Calder surged forward, engines flaring briefly. The Kargathi warship followed, expecting an easy kill, until Calder dipped into a stable trough mapped by Helios 3's data. The Kargathi ship followed. The trough collapsed. The anomaly swallowed the warship whole, silent, final. Hale stared at the projection. I've never seen a doctrine fail this fast. Cho didn't look away from his console. They're not mirroring our vector. Why not just follow the path we cleared? Rel answered first, his voice flat. Because they don't follow prey. Soren's expression didn't shift. They still think we're the ones in danger. A beat passed, then quieter. Let them keep thinking it. They're not trained for unpredictability, he added. We are. The corridor shuddered again. On the projection, the central rupture widened, an expanding wound of twisted gravity. Cho's voice was a whisper. Commander, the survivor pocket is inside that. Soren's shoulders tensed. This is our vector, he said. Commander, Rel said quietly, if we take that path, we commit to the far side. We won't be able to return through this region. We're not returning, Soren said. We're finishing. Beyond the viewport, The Kargathi shifted again, what remained of their line stabilizing into one final formation, blocking the only safe approach. The anomaly pulsed, louder this time, vibrating the hull. Hale turned. "Orders, sir?" Soren didn't hesitate. "Form up, inverted spear, passive sensors, minimal burn." "And destination?" Rel asked. Soren finally looked at him, straight through. The USS Victory adjusted its angle. Ravelin and Calder tightened. Anchor Point sealed its drone ports. Vale drifted into point position, its hull darkening to match the distortion around it. Iron Hand Group 9 aligned as one. Ahead, the Kargathi wall waited. Between them, the corridor shivered on the edge of collapse. Behind that, in the dark, a faint signal pulsed. Tired, steady, human. Soren exhaled once. "Move!" Iron Hand advanced into the storm. The corridor trembled, not collapsing, not yet, but close enough that every second felt like borrowed time, and the Kargathi turned to face them. The corridor convulsed as Iron Hand Group 9 closed in on the central rupture. The distortion ahead bent the starlight into a spiraling well, its edges fraying like torn fabric. Every sensor on Victory flickered in strained effort, fighting to hold coherent readings long enough for human hands to interpret them. "Stability falling," Hale said. "Tension under control, but present. We're inside the collapse window." "Calder reporting engine strain," Rel added. "Lateral stabilizers at 60%. Cho's voice cut through, calm but sharp. "Survivor signal holding. Pocket integrity still viable, but deteriorating fast." Soren didn't look up. "Maintain formation." Outside, space warped like a tide collapsing inward. Ravelin skimmed the forward edge of the vector, its hull grazing micro-shear waves that sparked blue across its prow. Calder held the flank, bucking under gravitic pressure. Anchor Point followed, engines cold, drone bays sealed. The Kargathi formation shifted again. "Commander," Rel said, "they're converging on our approach vector." Hale studied the readings. No uniform pattern. Some advancing, some falling back. "Fracture," Soren said quietly. The black tide was splitting. Hardliners surged forward, pushing their engines past safe limits. Others drifted back, unwilling to enter the anomaly's throat. A few ships hovered with no movement at all, their captains paralyzed between doctrine and survival. One Kargathi cruiser lurched into the path ahead, its silhouette jagged against the folding starlight. It opened with a wide salvo, kinetic darts streaming in a bright arc. "Intercepting," Rel said. "Don't," Soren answered. The USS Victory slipped under the salvo as the anomaly rippled, its wave collapsing the darts mid-flight, shredding them into dust. The Kargathi ship adjusted, trying to correct for the shifting geometry. It failed. A shear zone tore open beneath it. The ship buckled, its rear ripped apart in absolute silence. No explosion, no fire, just disassembly into particles that drifted away like grains of sand. Hale exhaled softly. "They're fighting the corridor." "Yes," Soren said. "They're refusing to understand it." A new signal flared on the display. Kargathi command signature. The Warcast flagship moved into view, holding above the collapse line. Its engines were stable, its vector clean. A disciplined captain, a dangerous one. The flagship's weapons charged, but did not fire. Rel frowned. "They're not engaging." "They're watching," Soren said. On the Kargathi bridge, the commander looked through the distortion at Iron Hand, his own ships failing around him. He gave no commands to retreat, no orders to attack. Doctrinal channels pulsed around him, fragmented, incoherent. His officers demanded alignment. His captains requested direction. He gave none. He watched. The USS Victory slipped past another distortion wave. Ravelin dipped into a gravity well, rode it, then drifted back to formation. Calder flickered in and out of stable space, adjusting in microbursts. They moved through impossibility with calm precision. The Kargathi commander saw it, and his expression tightened. Not fear, not reverence. Disbelief. Humans were not prey. Prey did not survive corridors like this. Prey did not read distortions in real time. Prey did not use the void itself as a weapon. Rel cut in. "Commander, survivor pocket ahead." A ripple opened in the collapsing corridor, a dark sphere of relative calm, its edges shimmering like thin oil. Inside drifted 3 escape shuttles, hulls cold, lights dark, life support systems flickering. "Vale," Soren said. "Go." Vale accelerated in a smooth, ghost-like line, threading through a distortion seam that opened for seconds at a time. Its hull shuddered as it passed through uncertainty, then emerged in the pocket with a muted flicker. "Life signs confirmed," Cho said. "All shuttles stable. Survivors in low-power stasis mode." Hale turned. "They're alive." "They did everything correctly," Soren said, voice almost quiet. Vale extended its docking umbilicals, each connection made with deliberate slowness. Hull clamps locked, stabilizers engaged. The shuttle's power cores remained cold. Awakening them now would destabilize the pocket. One by one, their survivors were transferred, unconscious but stable. Faces pale from extended stasis, but uninjured. "They held for 12 days, Cho murmured, in total silence. "Humans adapt," Soren said, "even to this." The corridor groaned. A massive rupture tore across the central plane, space bending like molten metal. The path behind them folded shut. The anomaly was collapsing inward. Rel snapped upright. "Commander, we have seconds." "Calder," Soren said. "Rejoin formation." "Calder reports engine instability," Rel called. "Then match our vector manually," Soren said. Calder drifted into place, engines shaking. Anchor Point's engines glowed with the strain of holding the formation's rear arc. Victory's hull sang under gravimetric pressure. And ahead, the Kargathi flagship finally moved, but not toward Ironhand. It backed away. Slowly. Deliberately. The commander on its bridge watched Ironhand with a fixed, quiet certainty. Around him, his own officers shouted, demanded, questioned. He ignored all of them. A single realization sat behind his eyes. Humans had survived the impossible, navigated it, mastered it. His doctrine had no answer for this. He gave no pursuit order. He simply watched. Cho's voice broke through. "Commander, we have an exit vector." "A narrow one," Hale added. "Collapse will cut it in half." "Ravelin ahead. Calder left. Anchor point right." Soren's voice was calm. "Victory follows." Victory adjusted its angle. Engines flared. The anomaly surged behind them. The path closed. Ironhand moved. The corridor squeezed inward, folding space into a narrow, shuddering funnel. Ravelin's hull grazed distortion. Calder's engine cut out for 3 seconds. Anchor Point lost 2 dorsal panels. The USS Victory pushed through. The anomaly collapsed behind them with a silent implosion, space snapping shut in a cold flash. Ironhand Group 9 burst into clear, stable space on the far side. Scars across their hulls, power systems strained, survivors aboard. Silence filled the bridge. Rel checked readings. "Commander, all ships accounted for." Cho added, "All survivors stable." Hale leaned back slowly. "We made it out." Soren finally looked at the stars ahead. "We did," he said softly. Anchor Point pulsed once. "Data burst transmitted," Rel said. "United Human Defense Front Command has everything Helios 3 recorded." Behind them, the collapsed corridor glowed faintly, its remnants drifting like ashes in a dark sea. And far beyond, the Kargathi flagship remained motionless at the collapse line, watching, learning, recalculating. On its bridge, the commander finally spoke, a single line, flat and rigid. The humans endured the corridor. His officers shifted, unsettled. A species that survived the impossible was no longer prey. And in the silence that followed, He understood something his kind had never admitted. Today was the last day humanity belonged in the prey column of his war tables.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here. Or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.